What's up, everybody? It's Phil John. Welcome to another episode of Phil John's V.I.P. Thank you so much for joining me this Saturday night. I am so happy that you've decided to come in and chat with me for a while. I have a special guest tonight, my friend and brother, Mr. Kevin Urban, who I'm excited for you guys to meet. Kevin is an actor of stage. He is a career coach and one of the founders of what used to be the Savvy Actor, where he would gather actor hopefuls and help them brand themselves in order to enter the industry and be successful. So without further ado, Kevin, just hit the join button, and we'll get this conversation started. I'm looking forward to it. So I see you there. There we go. I think. Kevin, just request to join. You there? There we go. Here we go. Thank you, Paul. Paul, thank you, brother, for coming in. I appreciate it. I see you. So I'm going. Wait. He is. Here he go. He come. Here he comes. Here he comes. Mr. Kevin Urban, everybody. Mr. Kevin Urban.
Hey, hey.
I am so excited to
Me
see
too,
you.
man.
You're looking youthful, sir.
Well, thank you, my friend. I mean, you're pretty youthful yourself. Hey, how's my framing at this point? Just
You're,
curious.
you're,
Because my
you're,
right now I'm
you're,
seeing I'm seeing just
right.
this.
You may have to dip down
All right,
a little
there we
bit.
go. How's
You're
that?
good?
I
All
look
right.
like I still have hair.
Your hair is kind of cut off, but
We'll
listen, I
we'll
got the
work with it.
face.
You know, we'll get the face. We'll get a little bit of I think I got one more. How's that? That's better.
That's perfect.
There we
Perfect.
go.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
It's always technology, man. It's always like, it's always like it's prepared to go, and then you go live, and then all of a sudden
Calamity
something
happens.
shifts. Yeah, yeah.
It's
I've
just
been in
like,
pres yeah, I've been in presentations, and I'm like I'm set up, ready to go, giving a presentation, and I've got my screen set up exactly how I want it, so that I can see people typing in and answering, and then something I go live, and then all of a sudden screens are switched, and then I'm like,
well, with the
crazy.
live, it's live. When
Live
you
is
tape
live.
it, you have like bloopers. I've taped auditions where I've had the backdrop just fall on top of my head.
Yeah.
So that's
Right?
always fun.
Like that, but for me, like I love that stuff, right? Like putting buttons in at the end of an audition, or just like showing real life, like in the middle of the audition. Just like, how do
Yeah.
you react? Like that's how you react on stage, right? It's like, okay, you're on set, like, well, something just happened. And usually that's the good stuff. That's like the gold. That's like,
Yeah,
that
sometimes
moment.
that could be the
Yeah,
gift.
it is the gift. And if
To
they catch it
the
on camera, that's even
I
better.
know, right? That's
Yeah, yeah,
I want to get into you, right?
yeah.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for joining me
My
tonight,
pleasure, my friend.
and
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about all that you're doing, all that you've done, and just talk about the journey. So I've already let everyone know that you are an actor, motivational speaker,
Yeah.
wonderful TED Talk that I was able to show a snippet of, and
Yeah. Thank you.
also now career coach.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. So where did it all start for Kevin Urban? How did you enter into what we now know as the entertainment industry?
Ooh. So truth be told, I started my journey in church. Yeah, 3 years old. My father would bring me into Sunday school, bring me for Sunday school early, and he was a member of the choir. And so I was sitting there, and the choir was warming up, and my dad was there, and so I just decided to warm up with the choir. So I was doing scales at like the age of 3, and found a love for singing. And from there, we had a really good music program that started. It started, I guess, at the age of like 5 or 6. We had like a junior choir, And I learned that I loved choral music. And then on top of that, they do shows. So I played Jesus and Five Loaves and Two Fishes. So man, right at the top, man, I'm playing JC, and I loved it.
Yes.
So Five Loaves and Two Fishes was like my first starring role, if you will. Um, and then I had solos going on throughout, in school, in public school, and in church at a young age. And so the progression just started from there. It started with hanging out with my dad and going to sing. And yeah, it's kind of funny. You don't think of finding theater through church, but spiritually, like I've always had a spiritual connection um, to acting, to performing. It fills my soul. It really does.
I think church has always been a theatrical experience, even when it's not trying to be. You know, I was just talking about. I was watching The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and I remember those years because we grew up watching that stuff, and my
Yeah,
grandmother
yeah,
actually took a trip to Heritage USA when it was open.
yeah,
So for me, I can totally understand how someone can get into theater through church because it
yeah.
is
Well,
theatrical.
yeah. Well, you also, and depending on, I mean, it's theatrical in a way that the spirit moves you. It can move
Mhm.
you in many different ways, and there's a lot of correlation um, to acting, right? If we're really kind of looking at it, when the spirit moves you, um, I've learned, yeah, everything that I've done has kind of started through that spiritual lens. But I've come and I've gone. I've developed over the course of time, right? So I was very strong in my church growing up. I was a Protestant, um, First United Church of Christ in Milford, Connecticut. I had my first like kind of like operetta was a Mall and the Night Visitors, and I played a Mall F.5, so as a boy soprano, and they gave me it really gave me like the confidence.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a little crush on this girl. I was in fifth grade. She was probably like 13 or 14 at the time, and she came up and she gave me a hug, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I'm like, all right, all
So you
right.
went. You went throughout school. What, did you go to a performing arts high school or?
I didn't know. So church was like my performing side, really. And then high school was all about like sports and athletics and trying to be like manly and,
DL just
um,
entered. I have to stop. DL entered, so I just wanted to say
oh,
DL.
mwah.
Continue. I'm sorry.
Talk, well, we have loves for DL.
Yeah,
Um,
no doubt.
yeah, yeah, who just made her Broadway debut,
Woo!
which was awesome,
Yes.
and so awesome to like see in person,
Yeah.
to see her just command the stage, like, um, yeah, oh man,
Yeah.
what a
Well, she's
privilege.
brilliant. She's brilliant. My love for DL is definitely on the stage and off because she's a solid. She's a ride. What we call a ride or die.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
So
one she's a beautiful person, and yeah, it was great to see her, to be there and support, and to know her journey too, to know
yeah,
that, it's all of our journeys, right? It's
absolutely.
um
Yeah.
to kind of to be able to sit back and see so many so many artists that I've worked with, um you know to see their journey, to see where they started, to see the highs, the lows, the challenges, the perseverance, um, how long it takes. You know, you don't realize it, but it takes 10 years for a career to really get going, to begin.
Right.
And when I first heard that, I was kind of like, that's just crazy. Um, I was doing a seminar with Allison Frank, and we had brought her in to it was for a musical theater audition class that we were hosting at the time, and this guy Bruce, probably at the time was probably like early 50s. And he came in, sang, beautiful voice, works a ton. Um, and Allison looks at him. She's like, "How come I don't know you?" And he's like, "Well, I've only been in the city. I think he had been in the city for like 5 years at that point, or something like that, or, fully focusing on auditioning." And she's like, "Oh, you're so young." It was like, because the thing is, it takes that 10 years. It
Yeah,
takes that time. It takes the time to make the connections, right? Like, I've
yeah,
known you for over 10 years at this point. And I've
over,
gotten to
way
watch.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've gotten to watch, I've gotten to see, like, you as a young, I've gotten to see you as a young actor. I've gotten to work with you, and then also to see the change, right? When we started, I didn't have gray hair, and you didn't have gray hair. You still had your boy, you still had the boyish good looks, though. And that's the essence of you, right? That's
yeah.
that's who you are, that shines through. And that's what I think that's the biggest challenge, is how do we keep that? How do we keep,
But you know what?
even
I
there are
have to
the
say,
challenges?
I love it at this stage though. It's so much sweeter. Like if people stick with it, and I always feel like it's kind of like you come in with like a class, and you kind of go, you get promoted with that class. So, and I've said this on, in my talks several
Mhm.
times, is that by the time the general public gets to see one of us, we've been in the trenches with each other for years. So
Yeah,
you're just being introduced to the world, but you
yeah,
know, we've been together for a long time.
yeah, yeah. And and that's what makes it fun too, is to root for those people that we've been in the trenches with. And um, to really start to really know how long it takes, and know what it takes for the
Yeah,
creative process. Because it's not for the faint of heart either. You know,
no,
um, it's but what it does is it forces you to learn. It
hmm
presents a lot of lessons, um, and I think that's the greatest value of it, bringing those lessons and bringing the tools of an actor, and learning the emotional intelligence that's needed, and how to convey that, and how to share that, and how to listen. All the skills that we learn as actors young, all those transition into every other thing that we do, and they transition well into any business. And
yeah,
um, and that's what I found exciting too, is that the skills and tools that we have transfer,
of
and people
course.
can learn them, and people can learn them. Yeah.
I think developing a tough skin helps as well. You
Oh
know,
man. Yeah.
rejection.
That's tough too, right?
Shout out to Julio Pena. Julio just joined us. So, but yeah, it's it's definitely. I think it's funny thing is that I can take rejection in this business probably better than anywhere else in my life.
Oof. Oof.
Because I think because
Yeah.
here it's expected. Like the expectation is I'm going to hear a no,
Yeah.
right? So you kind of take the no's and you roll with the punches and
Yeah.
you move on. It
Yeah.
just comes. It's a part of the. That's why you have to love it sometimes when it doesn't love you back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You know,
and Matt joined us too. So
Matt.
yeah.
I haven't seen Matt in a long time.
Yeah. Hey Matt. I know Matt through his wife, and uh and so who's also very spiritual, right? So a lot of, like, we
Mm-hmm.
were working together, to kind of help people connect spiritually, and uh, deliver online workshops.
Mm-hmm.
That was a piece that we were working on. And the spirit for me has been that kind of through line over the years, kind of getting back to, it's been that driving force. It's been the acceptance of, at an early age of, well, my biggest question was always why. Why do we believe in God? Why do we, like, I was asking the big questions.
Right.
and my mother would always say because. I'd be like, well, because isn't good enough for me. I need to know. I need to know stuff. And so that kind of also set me out on my search too, of understanding. Like, okay, so I was a deacon at my church. I sang in the choir. I was very active. It was a great place for community. But then I went to college and I took a psychology of religion course. And in that psychology of religion course, I learned that everybody that we read in the Bible would be considered crazy by today's standards. And then I'm going, well, why are we okay? Like, so then I wanted nothing to do with religion. I wanted nothing to do with it. And then it was acting that brought me back. It was to myself, to understanding the spiritual element that's important to me.
Right.
To give me a language to kind of get in my body, to listen to myself, to um, that's what the craft of acting brought back. That sense of connection, that interconnectedness.
The sense of connection to God, to spirit.
To spirit, yeah. To For me, I wouldn't say. For me, it's more at this point. I'm using like the universe, right? It's more
Right.
of this kind of interconnectedness that I've kind of always felt, you know,
Right.
um, with my fellow man.
I think
Um,
college was the kind of like the changing point for me as well, because there, um, even the discussion of the Bible was the approach was completely different.
mm,
Um, and I remember taking a class called India in the Middle East, and I had a teacher who was from Egypt who was raised Muslim but had become an atheiist. So he
mm,
would throw things out there to the class and have everyone kind of attack each other and sit back and just kind of watch it
so
all
interesting,
unfold,
right?
right? So it was able, and I remember I left the class. I would leave that class every night with a headache. The nights that we had
Mm,
class, I would leave a headache because it was actually chipping away at my belief system and everything I had been conditioned to believe throughout my entire life. So it brought opened me up, saying, "Oh, let me investigate a little bit more. Let me figure this thing out." But it wasn't until I got back into the industry full time, um, when I met. Oh God, I hate when I have those senior moments and names just kind of like go out of my head. Um,
you be those
it's
moments
gonna,
that
it's gonna
everyone
come,
has.
it's going to come back to me. I know what it is,
Yeah.
but it was uh, a young actor who I met at the network,
Yeah.
and we would get together at his house. I remember he lived over by a Lincoln Center, and he introduced me to um, Eckhart Tolle, A New
Yep.
Earth,
Yep.
and Eckhart and A New Earth changed my life.
Oh my God.
It changed
Um,
my life completely. And matter of fact, I know his name. His name is Mark Jones, and I just wanted to say that Mark Jones
um,
um,
I hope I
was
ran across him. Uh, it's so funny. Someone introduced the power of now to me, right? And I tried to get into the power of now, and I was just like, I couldn't.
mm,
Um, and then a couple years later, because some people had been like, "Oh, it's life changing." I was like, I just didn't connect to me. And then A New Earth came out, and a mentor of mine suggested that I take a look at it, and I read it, and I was just like, wow. Um, and it goes back to that like interconnectedness, right? It goes back to that, you know, to that, you know, for me, that sense of oneness. I'm looking over here to see if I have it out as one of my. It's not over here, but it's definitely up there in terms of like a top. You know, it's probably one of my top 100 at least. But like books, if I'm gonna,
absolutely.
actually, it's probably in my top 25. I would probably say.
I felt like what it did was it reconciled me back to the Bible, because
Mm,
the way the Bible was introduced to me as a kid was something that I no longer was interested in, right?
yeah,
But even with the language, with the church language and the church
yeah,
lingo, became something that I kind of like looked at as judgment and ridicule. Whereas, you know, you can really compare a lot of things that are in the new earth and find scripture for it. But now I
yeah,
was looking at the scripture through new eyes because of a new earth. So I'm able
Yeah.
to say the same thing to you in a different way, and it means the same thing because that's universal law. For example, whatever you put into the universe, you manifest, right? Whatever you put out, you get back. Scripture, whatever you sow, you reap. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same. The
Yeah.
language is different, but
Yeah.
that's a universal truth.
Yeah. Ecclesiastes, for me, everything has its season, right? Like that whole, yeah. It, you're right. For me, going away and then coming back, there's this interconnectedness there in terms of um, learning a different, learning that kind of universal truth and how they kind of relate. Um, you know, and it's interesting. You brought back Matt Kahn into my life,
Yeah,
um, and during and it's funny because I didn't realize who it was at one of my downtimes. This was in 2014, and when I was kind of when it was a low point, and unfortunately, we had, the Savvy Actor had closed down, and I went out to LA, and one of my clients out there, Carrie Geddes, was there, and she was talking to me, and just talking about this guy Matt and what he had to say, and she was like, well, I've met this great spiritual, mentor, and here's what he would say to this, and I will never forget that time with her. And then he comes up, you send me the link, you're like, hey, check this out, what do you think? I went on a walk, and I think his lectures can be long.
yeah,
You know what I mean, like, good, but it can be long. And so it's like, okay, so I had a day where I just took, it was like an hour long walk, and I was like, all right, this is exactly what I needed, because it was during COVID. And so it's like, yeah, this really speaks to me. And it turns out, like, I don't even know how all the pieces came together. I'm like, oh my God, this is the guy that Carrie was talking to me, coming kind of full circle, through you, reintroducing me to that sense of spirituality. And yeah, spirit is big. Spirit is big. Um, it's our creativity. It connects and drives so many things for us. And it's funny, I didn't think we'd be talking as much about that spirituality, but I've always, you and I have done so, in other
right,
areas. Like we've always kind of
yeah,
connected over
right.
that sense. One thing that I was going to say was, after September 11th, I had come back to New York. I'm sorry, before September, I had come back to New York City. My cousin had just passed away at the age of 8 from cancer, and he died in August of 2001. My roommate Dave had just moved out, to move back to Philadelphia, so I came back to an empty apartment, and I was searching for community because I had witnessed this church community support my cousins in a way that I haven't really seen before. And they're Baptist, and I just didn't jive, necessarily with going to church or with them, but the support in the community was just amazing. And I came back to New York, and I was like, I need to find support, and I need to find a choir. That's where I find community. So I went and I searched for choirs, and I came up with All Souls Church on 79th and Lex. 79th and
Yeah.
Lex?
Also,
Or
yeah,
81st?
yeah, I've been there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I went there, or I found that, and I was going to go there, and then all of a sudden September 11th happened. And the first, um, the I was still searching for that place, that community, and all, and that first service I went to there, they read from the Quran, and I was just like, after September 11th, after just witnessing in person, like seeing the city beat up, um, to read from the Quran, I was just like, I'm home. I am home. Later on, like I'd walk out of that church, and Forest Church was the the pastor, and Galen was also another pastor there. And I remember Forrest doing a sermon, and he was like, God is not God's name. He's like, that's what we call that which we can't comprehend, something along those lines. And I was just like, that's what I've been looking for.
Right.
Wow. Wow. You know, so after September 11th, right, going there weekly, really, and finding that sense of community there. But finding also a new place, a new, looking at the Quran, looking at the Bible, looking, and later on, then I start, later on, this was in 2013, 2014, I started going to the School of Practical Philosophy. And I don't know if you've been.
Yeah, I haven't been, but I've seen all the advertisements.
Right.
Yeah.
Happiness, right, on the subway.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, let's all right. So I've seen that, and I was looking for, after talking with Carrie and hearing about Matt, I was looking for that place to get centered.
Right.
And a friend of mine lived 2 blocks away, and she had me over for dinner and a couple of her friends. And I'm like, these people are really interesting. They're cool. And I'm like, how do you guys know? And they're like, oh, we met at the School for Practical Philosophy. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, how is that place? And they're like, it's great. And so for $10, you get 10 weeks, it's something like that. And you'd go to the building that was on, what was that? That's, I guess that was also, what, 75th? Anyway, beautiful, beautiful building. And they give you, tools that I never thought I'd
Right.
respond to. Like the first tool that they give you is, what would a wise person do? Like when you're faced with something, like what would a wise person do? A challenge or whatever. I'm like, well, my past Kevin would have been like, this is dumb. Kind of, kind of like I was with, the Bible at one point. Well, this is dumb. But they've stood the test of time for a reason. So anyway, we're
Right.
learning.
Right.
I'm learning this tool, right? And then they introduce another tool. What, everything before you is your teacher. Every situation and every person before you is your teacher. And I'm going, wow, totally starting to shift the mindset,
Yeah.
giving you tools to help you and then they introduce meditation. So I started meditating first for, like, I could barely get through, 5 minutes, but they start you off with doing an exercise where you're just going through basically an acting exercise, listening, listening to the sounds of the room, looking at something that has color, letting the color come into you, getting a connection to breath and smell, getting a connection to taste, and getting a connection to feel, like feeling just the clothes on your skin, or and so there's those tools, right? And so that led me to more spiritual, like another level, pulling back the onion, of meditation, and giving me that opportunity. They introduced me to my meditation stool.
I really want you to really just kind of give a detailed story about your experience. So everyone who's listening, Kevin went to a silent retreat. I forgot
Been
how
there
many.
several times, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
and I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that so that you can share your experience about how that was for you and what was the outcome
Okay.
of your experience.
So I would never have thought that I would be going to a silent retreat, um, ever. Just was never really kind of on my radar. But it was the meditation, the 5 minutes or whatever, that led me to being comfortable just sitting with my thoughts
Yeah.
and breathing. Some of it learned in acting, just connection to breath, like all the body work we have to do as actors, and so I already had that kind of, and yoga and practicing of that, and so it was, all these pieces started to come together, and it was reading a book called The Diamond Cutter, and that was recommended to me, and it written by it's a business book written by a Buddhist about the diamond cutting trade. And you know, great book, The Diamond Cutter. And in it, he goes, every person should go to the mountaintop at some point in their life. And he's like, unfortunately, in today's day and age, we can't go to the mountaintop because we're going to see people. Like, he's like, you really just need to go somewhere and just be by yourself and just be with your thoughts alone. I was like, okay, this is great. And so he's like, we can't do this really. It's really not easy with our society the way it's set up. He goes, but you can try. You can go to a silent retreat, and it's called Vipassana. And Vipassana is it's worldwide. S.N. Goenka was the person who brought it to the United States. And so basically, you go for 10 days and they serve you a vegetarian meal. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but I've never eaten a vegetarian for more than a meal, maybe 3 meals at most. And I'm like, okay. And it's only 2 meals a day. And I was like, okay. And I'm going to be silent. I'm not going to speak to anybody. Okay. I'm going to do this because I've never done this before and it's going to be a challenge. Now, I was also a competitive swimmer, so I'm used to doing things on my own that are hard.
Right.
And I would actually liken Vipassana to like a hell week of swimming, you know, or any sport where that you're doing 2 a days or 3 a days, and you know, it's a practice. There's a bit of a grind to it, but at the end you come out on top. So that's what I would liken it to.
Right.
So I signed up, and here's the thing. They don't accept any, you're going, they're not asking you for any money or anything like that. And they're, you know, and I have people who are going, you're going to a cult. You are going to a cult. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to a cult. And I'm like, okay, I'm still gonna go, and I'm gonna do this. But I was a little nervous about it. I ended up getting a ride up there because I didn't have a car at the time. And so, you know, the guy that was giving me a ride up, he had never done Vipassana before either. And he picked me up and we drove there. We had this whole conversation. He's like, I have my uncle who's done this. And he's like, he had just come from Minnesota. So it was a 2-hour time difference. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. He's like, but I know if I push through, this is going to be awesome. So get there, check in, you give away your phone, you don't bring any writing utensils, you don't bring pens, you don't bring a book, you don't bring a journal. There's nothing. And so I handed all my technology for the week, which I was so excited for, and a little bit nervous because it's been a while since I've been without technology for that long. I go in, I have a dinner, it's vegetarian. And at 7:00 they start. So at 7:00 we go in, and they start the practice. And I heard this guy's voice. He's passed away, but they play the tapes of him, and all I heard was and so he's on his chords, and as a singer, I'm going, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to listen to this. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know if I can handle this. But anyway, I did it first day. And so you go through and you wake up at 4:00 in the morning, and you go in and you meditate by 4:30. So for 2 hours, then you have breakfast, you have an hour off, and then you go back to meditating at, you know, breakfast is what, 6:45, 6:30, 6:45. And then you have an hour off, and then you go back to meditating. And then, you know, they give you, you know, he walks you through in some way, shape, or form. You practice breathing, and each day they add a little something new. And you're sitting on your pillow each and every day, and you pretty much know everyone who is around you.
What did you discover during that?
Oh man, so much. It's amazing how much you learn about other people without talking to them. It's amazing because you're not looking at people, you're not having conversations outside of the meditation hall. Like, you're keeping your eyes down. You're just becoming more aware. Your body the first time just slows down. Um, I learned that everything is temporary. Sometimes you feel the urge to go to the bathroom and they ask you not to, and soon it goes away. You don't have to go anymore. But there are times there are times where you're like, oh my God, I can't go. But it will go, it will pass. This too shall pass, right? From the Bible. Like, here we go. You're feeling it within your own body. And you know, um, there's a lot of, you start to learn that you use your thoughts as entertainment, as avoidance, to avoid maybe pain or to take you somewhere else. Um, I'll be honest, I got a lot of thinking done. I got like 10 years worth of work, like just in my head, like just because you are thinking, but the whole purpose of meditation is to not attach to your thoughts, not attach to going down the rabbit hole. Because one thought, one small thought can lead to another larger thought, and then all of a sudden you're down the rabbit hole and you're like angry or you're upset about something and you're worrying yourself and so it's about release. Now, I still worry and I still do all the, my meditation practice isn't as strong as it is like as soon as I come back from it, but I have to meditate 20 minutes right now.
So you said you went a few times. You said, right? You went like
Yeah, I've sat twice twice for the whole week, and then I also served. So I was in the kitchen for one of the weeks, for one of
okay.
the 10 days.
So
Um,
you weren't part. You weren't.
I
You
was
weren't
making the
the
food.
process again.
Part of it is like, how do you bring the practice into a kitchen? How do you bring the practice into life? And I don't know if you've ever worked in a kitchen before, or if you've ever served, or if you've ever bartended. Like, if you work in a restaurant, there's high stakes. People get mad at each other, and man, like it's like all these Zen people. But if you put them in the kitchen, like things are gonna like you're gonna stew about stuff. You're gonna be
So
angry about
were you
stuff.
still going through the silent process while you were working in the kitchen?
So no, I didn't have to be silent at that point.
Okay. Okay.
So I did this going into 2020. I did it over New Year's because I wanted 2020 to be something special. so I'm so I'm sorry, everybody.
Oh no,
It brought some.
it may have been exactly what you needed to go in to 20.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sitting there like I was just like, okay, I want 2020 to be a different year, and I was like, you know what it'll be different going in and meditating and bringing in positive energy into the
So
new
let me
year.
ask, why did you feel the need to go a second and third time? Why? Or was
Because
it a need, or was it just a want?
oh, because there's unfinished business. Because you come out, um, the world moves slower because you've disconnected from technology. I know the smells become clearer. I become more patient. You know, I become more connected to me. Um, yeah, that's beautiful. Uh, I'm my own worst critic, and I'm able to release things, to kind of practice letting go of the negative thoughts, or letting go of the um, yeah. Even now, though, you can see that it brings me down, like that meditation, like that place. It's not easy to stay in. You can't, I guess some people can stay in it. It was interesting. There's this guy there, and he, like, so the goal is not to move during an hour of meditation. Like, the goal is to just kind of stay there. And this guy was rock solid. I was just like watching him. I'm like, wow, this guy does not move. Because like some people would be like, you get sore like from sitting, but you're always in a proper posture. Um, and so this guy was just like, didn't have any like pillow other than one pillow to under his butt, like small pillow, Like he wasn't using any of the other accoutrements, and he just sat there like power. I mean, he was a power meditator. And I learned later, because the last day you're able to talk to everyone and share your experience. And I learned that he was actually like the guy in charge of, like, of all the buildings, right? So he was like the superintendent, you know. And so as part of it, he got to have a week where he went, and meditated. And he goes, everything changed in my life when I started to meditate 2 hours in a day, an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. He goes, everything changed. And you could see it in his eyes. Like it brings you down. Um, you know, it in an audition setting, or anytime the stakes get high, all of a sudden my eyes get bigger and I start to push. Like I'm like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
Um, all of a sudden it's like, oh, big energy time, musical theater time. Like, but when I'm there, everything just kind of like it's like when they talk to you about letting the camera come to you,
Yeah.
um, about allowing that to come. But it's a powerful experience. It's something
I,
that what's that?
I remember years ago there was a Eckhart Tolle meetup group, and they would meet up at a Buddha center over on the east side, like around
Mm,
the 30s.
yeah.
And I remember the practice for me. And when Deepak Chopra had his shop on 50, I think it was 54th and 7th,
Oh,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right across from the David Letterman Theater, and I will go in because it was open to the public. I'm
Yeah,
not sure too many people knew about it, but it was
yeah,
open to the public. And I found that the when my meditation practice was at its peak, I was able to let a lot of things go because I'm very active. It's like if you say something and I catch it
yeah.
and I think it's disrespectful, I'm going to react. I'm going to respond. And I found that when my practice was at its peak, I was able to hear it and kind of just like let it go. Like it was very easy for me to just kind
Yeah.
of let it go, you
So
know.
interesting. You use the two words together, that you react and you respond, but they're actually two different ways of being, right?
Yeah.
You know, you react to something that, do you react or do you respond? Because you can do both in that same situation. You can
Yeah.
either react and be like, well, how could you say something like that, or blah 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 blah, I can't,
I'm definitely
like angry.
yeah.
Or it can just be like, hey, that was unnecessary. Like, I'm gonna it's kind of like, yeah, I don't even want to go there actually.
For me it
the
was just
the
like,
the
you
Oscars,
know what?
but
It's okay.
yeah.
It's
um
okay.
but that's there was a time in my life, I don't think, that I knew that I could choose to respond, right? The whole reacting, I didn't have a choice. It was just a natural, it was just how I was taught. It was learned behavior of how I
Yeah.
reacted.
Yeah.
And I think even meditation, but, you know, school practical philosophy, just living in New York City too, like I've learned that I can choose to respond. I don't, sometimes, I react, but that's always when I'm working with clients and things like that, it's, you know, where's that coming from? Are you choosing that, or is that, are you choosing to respond that way, or are you reacting? Like, and how can we reframe that? Um, but yeah, like anytime you're in that kind of center, you can feel it, when you're in a place of peace. There's a solid, and so Vipassana is, the center that I go to is up in Massachusetts, and I feel that peace there. I definitely feel that peace there. It's so it's, getting back to, why do I go? And I will go again. Like, I'm looking forward to it. It's not easy to take 10 days off and just disconnect, and in today's world. Um, but what was also cool was that I was also going and seeing like the same people. They're going the same week because they could fit it into their schedule, and
Right.
and so because you're there, you learn people. There's this, I don't know, it was so interesting. Like, I could, by the time by the time 10 days are over, you know who arrived, you know how they are in life. You know if they arrive early, you know if they arrive late, you know if they, you know if they take shortcuts, you know if their bones creak, you know if they're sore, um, you know, and oh, that first time, by the way, that I that ride that I told you about, who didn't, you know, all of a sudden I got, you know, my ride on my to go back home. All of a sudden I look over and there's no one sitting where he was sitting for 4 days. He left. He couldn't handle it.
Wow.
And I was like, it's like, oh my God, what, you know, like, how am I going to get home? And
Wait, but
right,
did you hear from him after that?
funny thing, the next year I went the same week. So did he. He
What
didn't make it through
happened?
that. He didn't make it through that time either.
Wow.
Yeah. It's challenging. This is no like, you know, this isn't judgment about him. It's going, that's how tough it is. Like
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
tough. You know, it's challenging to sit in one position. Um, and you never know why, you know, you know, but he tried again. You know what I mean? Like he sincerely tried again. Yeah, there's a lot to learn when you sit in silence and you get more than you realize.
I gotta ask you my 5 questions that I ask everyone
Great.
who
Love
come
it.
on. And
Let's do it.
feel free to take your time and answer them however you want to, right? So the first question is an industry question.
Okay.
So tell me, what do you know now about the business that we're in, opposed to what you thought it was coming into the business?
Hmm. This is so coming in, I thought I had to be something other than me because I didn't love me. Um, and I didn't think other people would love me. That's not quite true, but there's some semblance to that. Like, there's an element of that. Um, I was an only child, so the spotlight was always on me. Um, and I kind of didn't want the spotlight on me at times. Like, I'm like, here, you go. But I love being in doing ensemble work, just doing that. And it wasn't until improv that I learned that the things that I don't necessarily love about myself are actually some of the things that make me so unique and that I have to own. Um, I tend to, when I get really tired and my blood sugar drops, I will start to get, I don't know if it's a form of dyslexia or something, but I'll put wrong words in the wrong order. And in high school, people would laugh at me at that. And but what I didn't understand was that um, when it came to improv and at UCB they talk about playing, you know, comedic improv and creating game. And there were times when people were laughing and I didn't realize that why they were laughing until like later I realized, oh, they're laughing at me
Yeah.
because of something I said that's funny. And then the whole game would start around that. But for years I would try to like get around that. I would try to avoid that like the plague. You know, I would tell people things that, you know, I'd be upset about something and they'd start laughing at me. Be like, what did I say? They're like, it's funny the way you say it. And I'm like, oh, I hate that about me. Like, I hate that. Right.
Right,
And I
right,
didn't
right.
want it. I wanted people to see me like, I used to get the word charming a lot. And I know that I can be charming. But the thing is, I knew that my charming, I would charm grandparents and I would charm babies. And I'm like, the people, you know, the people that I wanted to charm, I wasn't charming. You know, I wanted to be Prince Charming. I wanted to be the one that the girls like swooned over, right? And that's what I thought I had to be as an actor. When I
Yeah.
first came to, you know, when I first went to T. Schreiber Studios and my mentor Lynn Singer, um, you know, when I auditioned for, I'd been working out 6 days a week. I was solid. I was in great physical shame, great physique. And she walked up to me, she slapped my chest, and she looks up at me because she's like 5'3" or whatever. And she's like, you need to lose this. And she walked away, and I was like, well, what is that? And I'm like, I have to work with this woman. What do I have to lose? She's like, it's your armor. There's armoring up, trying to, and the thing is, you don't have to be the most masculine guy. You just have to be you.
Right.
And I thought in order to have an acting career, I had to be super masculine, and I had to do and I just realized that no, I could be masculine and I can be feminine. I can hold both of those, and those are both important to performance.
What advice would you give your 19-year-old self?
You don't work so hard and don't care so much. Because I had cared so much about what people thought. You know, I would examine everything. Yeah, that's what I go with.
What would you want your legacy to be?
Birthing projects that, birthing people's projects and creativity, like helping to be their doula and bringing in their unique ideas into the world, like helping people be themselves and share themselves and their ideas with the world. Like that's what I want my legacy to be, like helping people birth the creative endeavors that are within them. Yeah. Because birthing it is so hard. It's so hard. And we're guys. we don't even know the half of it, right? Like
Right.
like like if birthing a creative project is hard, woof. Oh,
Right.
women, wow. They create on all
They
sorts of
bring
levels,
life
right?
into the world.
Yeah. But
Right.
that's what I'm helping people bring life into the world. Bring
Yeah.
that. That's what I'm looking at.
What brings you joy?
Talking to people like you.
Ah, don't get sentimental.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that I wanted to say, just piggyback off of what you mentioned about how your armor, and I think that one of the things I've always tried to part of my armor was making sure that people would always be very careful about what they say, what they do, and how they treat me. So I always had a wall up, and I'm always guarded. And when people would come up to me, when I would be auditioning for like casting directors and agents, and they would say, "Oh, Phil, you're like a big teddy bear. I just want to hug you." And I'm
Do you
like, "I'm not a teddy bear."
do you remember doing the weekend intensive, and that's coming up and standing up in front of
Yeah,
people?
yeah, yes.
And
I
that's
do
that's
remember.
exactly like
I got a lot of that.
and
Yeah,
the reason to do that, to have people stand up in front of a group of strangers, is to find out like first impressions, because you can't deny them.
yeah.
And it's that teddy bear quality about you. That's your biggest asset, right? But that's that thing. So your teddy bear is my charming.
Yeah.
Like, like Chunk, and like literally I was Chunk in Goonies, like as a kid. That was me. Like that was literally me. I had his same sneakers when he gets pulled over and you just see his I had his sneakers. Like I was that I had that same body shape, like everything. Like I was Chunk. And when he's I always think of the scene where it's like, and then I took vomit, and then and that's what I think of when I think of charming. I think of Chunk.
You're like, I don't want to be.
Weekend,
I don't want to be safe. Yeah, but we talked about like the toxic masculinity in our culture. And I think that
Yeah.
that to say people are comfortable with us and safe with us sometimes makes us feel less masculine than we should be. Masculinity, and which it is masculine, very masculine actually, but
Yeah.
culturally, masculine has always been the guy that was more like the superhero, the one who came to
Right.
save the day and took care of everything and protected
Right.
people. And you could what do they say, speak softly and carry a big stick. You know, you can be
Well,
gentle
that was,
and still
yeah,
protect.
that was my grandfather, right? And that's what that I find is so important to me is that for me, it's important for people to show up.
Absolutely.
And I think in this business, that's probably one of the toughest things is that there's a lot of people that don't always show up. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, but um, that's not
There's
everybody,
another
but
saying: don't tell the world you're coming, just show up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, and that's what my grandfather did, um, and my dad, and my both my parents, right? They showed up, like you know, and I think that that's so important for me in any relationship is the showing up, and yeah, um,
And my last question for
yeah.
you: what are you grateful for?
Hmm. I'm grateful for friends. Um, I'm grateful for learning lessons um, and having a growth mindset um, and being able to like, you know, I've been fortunate. Like my spirit is kind of like to bring it all back. My spirit has kind of led me to where I need to be, and sometimes I don't always trust it, but when I do, it's always right. Like if I don't let my mind get in the way, it's always right.
Amen.
I've become a caretaker for my father, um, and I really value the time that I have with him right now, and and Spirit led me here, you know, to be here with him as he's going through um, some challenging times health wise. So um, yeah, I'm thankful. I feel like I have like I've really lucked out. I feel like I have like you know there's always been some sort of guide that shows up and presents themselves when I need it. And that Matt Kahn, that day that you presented that to me, that was a day that I needed to hear that message. Like, and I find that I'm more trusting in hearing the message. And some of it has to do with getting older in age and wisdom, and some of it has to do with having worked with a lot of different types of people and really understanding like mindset and psychology um, and that's you know and I've been fortunate. So yeah, I've been fortunate to learn to listen to the guideposts, to see the guideposts, to listen to the nudges that come through, the downloads that I get periodically, especially when I'm doing Vipassana or um, yeah, I'm grateful for the people that show up in my life. You know, people like you, people like, we know each other because of Paul Michael and the
Yeah.
network, right?
Yeah.
That started, that's how we know each other.
All right.
And, that's where it started. And he showed up at the right time, right?
Yeah.
And supported me. And, um, and it's Lynn coming up here. Like I would never, I could have been like, I don't want to learn from this woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about, but
Right.
man, I'm glad I said yes there. So and there are times I've said no to the things I should have said yes to, but um, but uh, but yeah, thank you for this. Yeah, thank you for
Thank
asking me that
you
question. Yeah,
for joining me. And like
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
always say, we're always where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there. We're
yeah,
right exactly where we're supposed to be
yeah.
in this moment. So thank you so much for joining me
This
tonight.
was awesome, man.
No, I
Yeah.
appreciate it, brother.
Yeah. No,
Definitely.
I appreciate you, and yeah, I'm any chance I get to talk to you, it's a
Yeah.
privilege. It
Yes.
really is.
Please, if whoever's watching, go to www.kevinurban.com for more information on Kevin Urban, career
Yeah.
coaching and motivational speaking. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have been with us tonight and definitely feel free. I'd be happy to have a chat with you about the coaching process and where you're at. So you can go to my website, kevinurban.com or businesscoachingforcreatives.com.
All right. Peace and blessing, brother.
Peace and blessings to you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
No doubt.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
Buenas noches.